Hey guys, I hope you're doing well. As the more observant of you may have noticed, this is not my office. Since the last recording we are now in quarantine, so I'm going to be recording these from my home. We do have some stockpiled footage of the work me and Nathan have been doing, but we're no longer allowed to meet up in public, so we're going to have to work on some innovative ways of getting those videos sorted, but hopefully we should have enough footage for the next few weeks. Over the last few episodes we've been talking about Genesis, we've been talking about the things God created and his relationship with creation. But it provokes a lot of other thoughts, because I've been thinking a lot about what exactly did God create, because most of us, we kind of agree that God created, most Christians at least agree that God created matter, he created the particles that make up this reality that we understand, but we also agree that there's other levels to reality, there's physics. So did God, for instance, create the laws of physics which seem to fine-tune the universe? Which probably is somewhat influenced by what your idea of physics is, in what ways God's relationship with that is. For instance, it could be that we think that God is simultaneously acting on every particle in a consistent way. So every time I drop a stone, there's a sense in which God is pushing that stone down, he's moving those particles in that way. But if that's the case, then what exactly is a miracle? If God is simultaneously doing the laws of physics and moving that down, then how would it be any less of a miracle if the stone went up? It would be unusual, but God's relationship with that stone wouldn't be any different than if I dropped it and it went down. So, at the same time, this has a lot of consequences about how we view God, because there's a big difference between saying God allows earthquakes, for instance, or he allows tidal waves and all sorts of other horrific things. There's a big difference to that to saying that God is actively doing those things, which if we have that view, then we would have to be saying that. The second idea is that God kind of wrote the laws of physics at creation, the same way that a computer engineer might write a bit of computer code. He might write the laws down in a computer to say, this is what this computer is going to be doing. I don't really understand computer code, so I'm not going to go too much into it, into that analogy. But that asks further questions. For instance, could God have created an entirely different world with an entirely different but coherent set of laws of physics, where every time you drop a stone it always rises rather than goes down, or other bits of physics don't apply? And if that's the case, then we have to ask, why did God create the world like this? Why did God create it specifically with these sets of rules? The third option is that the laws of physics are a universal set of truth, that they kind of predate creation, as it were. Perhaps that God is just abiding by those. But if that's true, then there's a sense in which God is somewhat bound by those laws. Or at the very least, when a miracle occurs, he's actively acting against those laws. But then at the same time, those laws are kind of meaningless if he could constantly override them anyway. And if he could override them at any time, why couldn't he override them constantly? So he can't be bound by those laws. So I think most Christians would probably edge towards the second of those, the idea that God created the laws of physics and then he sort of wrote them and set it to work, as it were. But if that's the case, then let's take it a step further. Did God create logic and reason? Because that seems very similar, but has much larger implications. If God created it, then how could God be coherent, given that he precedes logic? How can we understand anything about God? Surely he needs to be somewhat logical, otherwise would he still be God? He'd just be a force of chaos. At the same time, if God created logic, surely he would have had to have been logical before he created it. So that has a huge amount of implications. I mean, if God did create logic, could he have created a completely different world with a completely different but coherent set of logic? A world where 2 + 2 = 5, but those words all mean the same as they do in this universe. Could he have chosen to create a world where logic doesn't apply at all, where there's no reason, where there's no ability to understand anything? If God didn't create logic, though, on the flip side, surely there's a sense in which he's bound by it. if God couldn't create a world where 2 plus 2 equals 5, then he's restricted by logic, which has an entirely different set of implications. So those are just a few thoughts I've been having about God's creation in Genesis. Let me know what you guys think, have a think about what I've said, and give us some of your ideas in the comments.